Well, ladies and gentlemen, another day in retard Donistan, and don't forget, this Zionist shield got paid $7,000 to make this video. I wish somebody would tell the people who are paying me for these videos where they can send the check, because I've still not received the check. I remember a time when I was a DA shield and the DA were paying me to make videos. To today, the DA still hasn't sent me the checks. I must be the worst shit in the world. I never seem to get paid. Anyway, before we get on to the main news of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Let's get on to the news of today. Well, I've got a mix of news, and let's start off with our favorite topic. This is the topic I've been talking about of late because many individuals argue that, somehow I have an anti-Islamic agenda. I don't. I have an anti-political Islam agenda. And that is actually not an unfair comment to make, because as the Prime Minister of Israel says, radical Islam threatens all of our futures. Have a watch.
Israel is not just fighting our battle, it's fighting the battle against radical Islam that threatens the future of the world. And I think many people thought communism would threaten the world, or China would threaten the world. I'm saying that this untethered force of an extremist ideology that knows no limits, if it has nuclear weapons, the ballistic missiles to deliver them, and the masses that will destroy democracies, burn Christians.
Prime Minister,
we're committed to defending Christians around the world and in the Middle East. If they win the day, we all lose. Israel is defending itself, but in so doing, we're defending Western civilization.
So why exactly do I talk about this? Well, actually, it's not because of Israel, so to say. It's actually because of the UN. Now, you will recall that one of the things Ron Porter likes to drone on and on and on about is obviously the international order, international law. And he wants there to be this multipolar world where we all sit there working with our little preferred allies. And the problem inevitably becomes is that the arbitrator of these rules appears to be globalist organizations, such as the UN. But you see, the UN has serious credibility issues. Let's use the example of the UNRWA. Now, for those of you who don't know, the UNRWA was actually set up in 1948. And the reason for it was actually around the original establishment of Israel and the original refugees from Palestine. Now, you got to remember that the original refugees from Palestine, 1948, were actually as a result of a war. The state of Israel got declared. Many states attempted to invade Israel almost the same day. They lost, and many individuals were displaced as a result of the war. So the UNRWA was set up to facilitate this. Now, underneath international law, it's important to understand that an individual is only a refugee for as long as they don't have a nation state to call their own. Let's use the example of the South African refugees going to America. If they were classed underneath the UNRWA as being refugees, well, those individuals would, once they get American citizenship, no longer be classed as refugees. They would effectively become American. Here's where the problem comes in that when the original UNRWA was founded, the only nation on the planet that has indefinite refugee status is the Palestinians, which is why in 1948, there were 150,000 Palestinian refugees, but that status seems to continue in perpetuity with all of the descendants, regardless of whether they were born in other nation states or have other nation states citizenship. Those individuals will remain refugees for all time. Now, that in itself becomes problematic because what you will notice is that when the UNRWA was originally founded, that cause of the Palestinian issue was a cause that would last as long as the state of Israel is in existence, which is why today there are over 5 million refugees from the Palestinian territory, if you want to call it that. No other nation on the planet has that degree of protection. Now, that body, the UNRWA, as a UN body, well, 12 of the employees from that body actually participated in Hamas's October 7th massacre. And the UN afterwards sought to seek immunity from prosecution for these employees that were actually involved in the massacre itself. So that's okay with the UN when their own parties get involved in the mass slaughter of other individuals. Now, you see, that shouldn't actually be surprising because the World Vision Gaza director, who directly diverted funds to Hamas, Amnesty International, an international organization, called that individual, when he was imprisoned for funding Hamas, they called him a prisoner of conscience and called for his release. You see, according to the globalist order, terrorists in this faction, they're not terrorists, they're freedom fighters. So therefore it should come as no surprise that a UN special reporter on food suggested that Israel's reputation could not be reformed and that the state itself needs to lose its statehood. This has never happened before. You need to understand that. Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, Iran, no other nation in the history of the planet has had these crime suggestions that warrant the state itself being delegitimized and being deregistered as a state. Do pray tell me how Israel's crimes are so bad that it warrants somehow this selective, brand new thing that nobody's ever done before. Many would argue that that would be disproportionate. Many would argue that that would be very selective in terms of its approach. And many argue that the actual issue is that the UN appears to have an issue with the self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland. Now, I myself would probably take that view. I don't think that the UN itself is actually impartial, and I do believe that what we are seeing in action is political Islam. So political Islam has taken over the institutions, in my opinion, of the UN, which itself delegitimizes the impartiality of the UN. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why we talk about this topic. Now, you see, you know where we can really see this all in action? If we wanted to pick on a nation state and say, right, where can we actually see these policies in real life? Or we can actually turn our attention to the UK, which is also why I talk about the UK. Keir Starmer was once asked, prior to being elected, if he had to choose between the UK Parliament and Davos, what would he choose? And he said Davos because he thought being insulated or looking inwards your own country was very small-minded and narrow focus. So he said he was far more interested in the global order. Well, since doing that, obviously Keir Starmer has won an election. He didn't win the popular vote, he just happened to get the most votes because nobody voted. In any case, he's still the Prime Minister of the UK. And since coming to power, he seems to have cozied up to many political Islamic activists, such as his friend Sadiq Khan. And having done so, he seems to have implemented a very useful word called Islamophobia. Don't take my word for it, have a watch.
One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. Islamophobia is intolerable. It can never, ever be justified, and we have to continue with a zero-tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online which I think needs tackling much more robustly than it is at the moment.
What I'm hoping, Keir, is your experience as a prosecutor means you'll be thinking about the strategy we can use to make sure we take action against those who break the law.
Now, this all came to a head of recent with some political commentators in the UK suggesting that the UK was being colonized. Now, in response, Keir Starmer called that suggestion vile and horrendous and a complete betrayal to the greatness that is multicultural Britain. But you see, you don't have to listen to the commentators noting it. You just got to listen to the 6% of the population that appears to be saying it themselves. Many of these individuals are not interested in integrating with said societies and wish wholeheartedly to supplant the nation-state's law. Don't take my word for it, have a watch.
Take it away. There will come a point where this oppressive rule or this system that we live under, which we do not accept, will end. That same Islamic system, that Islamic society will return. in the best way possible, ala minhaj al-nubuwwah, upon the manhaj, upon the method of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And inshallah, we study his seerah, we study the Islam, we follow his methodology, and which is the perfect methodology. So no one can say, if Islam is perfect, no one can say that Islam cannot be implemented today because the system has changed, reality has changed. Every one of us implements Islam in our daily lives in every aspect of it, صح? So naturally, if we believe that Islam is how to eat, how to sleep, how to treat your family, it's political, it's economical, it has judiciary, it has foreign affairs, it has everything to it. So if we want to change the system, we look at, okay, what is the problem, the core problem, the proper solution, and how to implement that through the method of Rasulullah. I think.
So what does this actually then look like in practice? Well, the Adhan was sung at a Liverpool football club at a football match. I mean, that's odd. Have a watch. We also see this with the very young population of mainly Muslim immigrants that have moved to the UK. If you want to know what that will look like in the future for the UK, look no further than Birmingham, an area that is now, well, not exactly filled with the historical British. In fact, have a watch what those individuals have to say themselves.
Will not tolerate the disrespect of our Prophet, peace be upon him, and there will be outcomes from your actions. You will have repercussions for your actions. We have been trained from birth that we must defend the honor of our Prophet, and we will lay our life on the line.
Okay, you know, the other argument is, but okay, so if you don't like it here, go to your own country.
But why would we do that when our forefathers were instrumental in rebuilding this country after World War II? It was our grandfathers who worked in the factories 20 hours. It was our grandfathers who came here and run the infrastructure. It was our grandfathers who bought you the lovely curry, which is your national dish. So how can you tell us to go? We're not going nowhere. We are here to stay. Like I say, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over.
So it seems very much to me like what is going on here is that potentially colonization is occurring. Now, the government seems to know this, which is why today they have issued a brand new guideline. And underneath this guideline, apparently cultural nationalism, that's the view that Western culture is under threat from mass migration, a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups. Well, according to the UK government, this is now extreme right-wing ideology and is a terrorist ideology. I shit you not. This is where this all leads to. Sit there and call me whatever the freak you want, but this is where we get to. Don't think it's isolated, and don't think it doesn't come for you. You could then look at other countries, such as Turkey. Now, do not forget that Turkey is actually a NATO member. Now, Turkey itself, its president, classed as a moderate, says that the atrocities that occurred on October 7th is actually real Islam. He says it's not extremism, it's just like normal. In fact, don't take my words for it. Have a watch.
Toplantılar yapıyorlar. Son yaptıkları toplantıda yine bir araya geldiler. Tüm Batı Hamas'ı bir terör örgütü olarak görüyor. Şimdi buradan sesleniyorum. Ey İsrail, sen bir örgüt olabilirsin. Çünkü bu Batı'nın sana borcu çok. Ama Türkiye'nin sana borcu yok. Ve Hamas bir terör örgütü değil, topraklarını ve vatandaşlarını koruma mücadelesi veren, evet, bir kurtuluş ve bir mücahitler grubu.
So what does this all lead to? Well, what we're seeing in places like the United Kingdom is a certain narrative being pushed with a political agenda. One might argue an Islamic political agenda. And where we saw it specifically was in the allegations of genocide leveled against Israel. Now, we saw this from many of the globalist type bodies, which include charities such as Oxfam, funded by the UK public. But in a twist, a former Oxfam CEO is suing the Organization for Antisemitism and for pushing the genocide allegation without any form of evidence. Now, this suggestion that the allegation of genocide has been pushed without any form of evidence appears to be becoming more and more frequent, and yet people are not talking about it. It's almost like the agenda to push the narrative of genocide was a Islamic political agenda. Well, I hear you, ladies and gentlemen, you tell me, well, it doesn't really impact us, except it will, because in a twist, another area not famous for high-density Muslim populations, Dallas, Texas, we recently saw an Islamic imam get very angry with a fellow Muslim congregant for daring to talk to a Christian pastor. This is what happens in your nation state when we allow political Islam to infiltrate. Have a watch.
Listen, come here. Please, I'm asking a question. No.
He's getting.
You have to listen to me.
Just had one more question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Question.
One question.
No. Please come.
Don't listen to him. He's trying to manipulate you.
I'm not fighting.
Neither one of us are fighting. You're being more confrontational than we are. You're trying to confront this man and force him to go inside, officer. You're violating our free speech.
That you are trespassing from the property of the church.
You see this? This man right here is threatening to trespass this Muslim right here because he's talking to a Christian on a sidewalk. You see that?
On the property, you're going to go to jail for trespassing.
So you know where else we can also see the delegitimization of the UN in real time? Well, if you've been watching my videos, you would have seen that the UN Human Rights Council recently elected to their advisory committee an individual from the Islamic Republic of Iran. You know, the republic that is currently responsible for wholesale slaughters of its population? Yes, that republic is now represented on the UN Human Rights Council, which means that the UN itself is becoming a parody at this point in time. Now, let us come back to the start. Ramaphosa is incredibly pro-UN. He's incredibly pro-international orders. And the international orders themselves are becoming a joke. They are all being weaponized for political agendas. And many of these political agendas will not serve your nation state well. In fact, we can even see that in a place like France, where in 2025, more than 50% of the religiously motivated hate crimes in France targeted Jews. Why do you think that is? Is it possibly because the French have a deep hatred of the Jewish population, which represents 0.6% of the population of France? Or is it because of the mass importation of foreign military-aged individuals that have gone to France seeking economic opportunities? Well, you can let me know what you think in the comment section below, because for me to comment on it would, according to the UK government, be akin to terrorism. Yes, this is the world we're living in, and the mere fact that I'm raising this must mean that somehow I'm an Israeli shill, an Israeli spy, a Hamas agent, insert words here. The allegations never cease to be circulated. Anyway, let's turn on to some South African news, and let's keep it in the guise of the international order, specifically around Russia, because the DA is now suggesting that Russia may be running a counter-campaign against the DA. Now, according to the DA, a Russian agency is reportedly consolidating influence networks formerly linked to Wagner, and those groups are targeting the DA on behalf of the ruling party. Now, according to the DA, they have evidence that in 2024, over 80,000 coordinated anti-DA posts were put into the public domain just before the election period, with many hashtags used to frame the DA as a white party, with the goal of essentially swinging the election outcome. Now, some influencers claim that they were paid by Russian-linked clients. It's amazing how many allegations of paid influence we seem to be getting. Remember, I'm somehow paid by the DA. I was apparently at one point in time a Russian stooge, and now I'm paid by Israel. So I take these allegations of being paid with a pinch of salt. In any case, the DA warns of foreign influence shaping South Africa's 2026 local government elections. We've heard this all before. We heard it in the US. Remember, the Democrat Party said that it was the Russians who were running campaigns to help Trump win. They had a whole inquiry into this, and it turned out to be false. Well, the DA is now using the same playbook. Isn't that fascinating? Now, you see, the ANC doesn't really need help to lose an election. All they have to do is just keep doing what they're doing. Because in other news, the Minister of Water and Sanitation in South Africa, despite there being water crises everywhere, decided, you know how we're going to help South Africa's water issues? Are we going to go to Ethiopia? Yep, we're going to go to Ethiopia and talk about South Africa's water. This is what you're left with. The ANC government are not interested. They are not interested in governing this country. They are only interested in acting like clowns on the global stage. Don't take my word for it. Have a watch.
Water song. This is an international song for water. When we say
Now, if you looked at that and thought, oh my God, I want to bury my head in the sand and pretend I wasn't South African, well, you're not alone, because many individuals are all commenting in a similar guise. But you see, according to the ANC, well, the ANC needs to run South Africa, because without the ANC, the country will become ungovernable. And this is the words of the former President Thabo Mbeki. Have a watch what he had to say.
I can say here that the ANC is too big to fail. Meaning the same thing. If the ANC collapsed today, ceased to exist, this country will become ungovernable. Simply because of the influence of the ANC. 3 provincial governments are ANC, national government is ANC. Even if you forget about the municipalities, if the ANC collapsed and ceased to exist tomorrow, the country would become ungovernable. It's too big to fail. And therefore, that's why I'm saying, comrades, the ANC owes it to the nation, to the country, to sort itself out. Not so that police Dugwana should become provincial chair. But so that the ANC plays a role that is expected of it by the people. This thing to which the ANC has always been committed from its foundation, to serve the people of South Africa.
Now, for one, don't buy this one iota. In fact, I actually think that South Africa would run better without the ANC. But that's just my opinion. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And until next time, bye.